Up here you got views of Renjo, the Gokyo lakes, Gokyo village itself, Ngozumpa glacier, which is one of the largest glaciers in Nepal and the whole Himalayas. You have gigantic mountains, you have Makalu, you have Phortse, Namche, Everest, Choyu. It's one of the very few places in Nepal where you can see 4 8,000ers from one viewpoint. Namaste, Tashidelek, and welcome back to The Man Who Stared at Mountains. This video is the second part of our Gokyo Trek. In the first video, we showed you our flight into infamous Lukla airport, our climb up to the large town of Namche Bazaar, our rest day through the beautiful Sherpa villages of Khumbu and Kunde, our trek on to Pangboche monastery, and finally to Pangboche, from where we had a beautiful day hike up to Dablam base camp. If you haven't seen the first part, I highly recommend you check that one out first. I put a link to it in the top right corner of your screen right now. Last time I left you off in Pangboche, from where we finally wanted to enter Gokyo Valley. First half of the trail from Pangboche to Phortse is very easy and almost flat, and you have great view on Mount Thame and also the famous Pangboche monastery. The second half of the walk is a little bit more difficult and features the famous Nepali flat, means a little bit up, a little bit down all the time. Once reaching Phortse, there were in theory two options for us to go on. We could stay on the east bank of Gokyo Valley and hike up through the villages of Thame and Dhole, or we could go down to the Dudh Kosi river, cross the bridge and climb up again to the west bank of the valley. Now, in Phortse we couldn't find solid information on whether the lodges in Thame and Dhole are actually open. Many people suggested they were, but we couldn't get reliable information that they definitely are. So we decided to go down to the river, to a hamlet called Phortse, cross the river and look for lunch there. From Phortse on, it's about 500 vertical meters up to the town of Dhole. And this is where we are right now. We are in Dhole, and today we will trek on to Gokyo. Gokyo is another 700 vertical meters up from Dhole. If you come directly from Namche Bazaar, or if you're not fully acclimatized, I strongly recommend you don't try to walk from Dhole to Gokyo in one day, as the altitude difference is big and you might risk getting altitude sickness. We think we are able to hike all the way to Gokyo because we already acclimatized at Dablam base camp. From here it should be about 3 hours to reach the village of Machermo and 3 more to reach Gokyo. Let's go! Do you want to see the 6th highest mountain in the world? I'd show you. Not gonna lie, that was a tough one. Immediately after you leave Dhole, there is a 300 vertical meters climb. Doesn't sound like much, but at this altitude it's quite exhausting. It's quite tough. But after you manage that, it's almost flat all the way until Machermo. The trail wasn't quite as flat as I hoped for. Between the town of Luza and Machermo, and also immediately after Machermo, there are 2 very short but also very steep climbs. Nothing special at sea level really, but at 4,500 meters can be quite challenging. We are now past Machermo and about 20 minutes from our lunch spot. I can already see it in the distance. Almost immediately after lunch, the last big climb on our trek to Gokyo awaits us. It's 300 vertical meters up. It looks quite steep from where I am now. It's directly in front of us, and it seems almost if it leads directly up to Choyu. Holy yuck! That was quite a piece of work getting up here. But I think we managed to climb the steepest part by now. The valley is leveling out, and this looks like a rather flat, huge, stony desert in front of me. There are 6 major lakes in Upper Gokyo Valley. Gokyo Village is on the 3rd lake, and right after Lake 6 you're at the base of Choyu. And we now reached lake number 1. It's not much of a lake, to be honest, more of a pond, but if it means that the hardest part of the climb is over now, I'll take it. There it is, lake number 2. And because it couldn't decide which beautiful color it wants to be today, it decided it's 2 different ones. Gokyo Ri appears to be very close now, so I guess it's just this one more hill until we reach the third lake, and therefore our destination, Gokyo village. If that isn't one of the most beautiful places in the world, then sorry, I don't know what is. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful Gokyo. Not necessarily the village itself, but certainly the location, the lake, Gokyo Ri, Chouyu at the end of the valley, the clouds rolling in the afternoon. It's really something magical. We will stay here for 3 nights. That means we have 2 days here. The plan is currently that tomorrow we will climb Gokyo Ri, and the day after we will go north towards Chouyu base camp to the 5th lake, and behind the 5th lake there is another good viewpoint called Ngozumpa. And then after that we will try to cross the Renjo Pass, which should be just behind me right now, and walk either to Lungnan or to Thame and back south towards Namche Bazaar. We are halfway up Gokyo Ri. There is not really much point in me explaining the trail to you, because you could pretty much see the whole thing from Gokyo. It is quite steep in places, so it's a very good idea to try to keep your heart rate down as possible and make small steps. But there is a very good reward in taking that challenge, because once you're over 5,000 meters, Everest and Namche and Phortse and Makalu already start to appear on the horizon. I just found a caterpillar at 5,270 meters. If you happen to have any idea what species this is, please write it in the comments below. Up here you got views of Renjo, the Gokyo Lakes, Gokyo village itself, Ngozumpa Glacier, which is one of the largest glaciers in Nepal and the whole Himalayas. You have gigantic mountains, you have Makalu, you have Phortse, Namche, Everest, Chouyu. It's one of the very few places in Nepal where you can see 4 8,000ers from one viewpoint. It is amazing. Okay guys and girls, that was Gokyo Ri. Let's talk numbers. Going up took us a bit less than 2.5 hours. I don't think we were particularly fast, so that is pretty much a realistic number for everybody, I think. Going down took us 1 hour and 15 minutes. If the trail is not slippery due to snow or mud, it's really easy to walk. I could imagine if it's slippery, it will take a bit longer. As you've seen, Gokyo Ri is a wonderful viewpoint. But still, people keep telling me there's supposed to be an even better viewpoint in Gokyo Valley. The name is Ngozumpa, and it's supposed to be about 8 kilometers further north up the valley and about 150 meters taller than Gokyo Ri. So in total, we're looking at a climb of about 800 vertical meters and I don't know, 18 to 20 kilometers hike, I guess. So we started a bit earlier today. It's still before 7. Gokyo village is still dark, but at the end of the valley, Chowiyu is already glowing in bright white. Guys, I don't know if you can understand me, but it is insanely windy. It's very cold. It's quite dangerous. We only reached 5,150 meters. Meanwhile, I'm back down at the glacial moraine. Shukra and Toby decided they wanted to check if they can get a little bit higher despite the storm. I'm very curious what kind of pictures they bring down from there. To be honest, the viewpoint is excellent. It is really good. Even if I was only just halfway up, the view I think is better than Gokyo Ri. However, it's a much harder trek because you need about 3 hours to actually reach the mountain. There is no trail onto the mountain, So I suggest you don't try that without a guide. You might even consider hiring a local guide from Gokyo. There is a trail on the mountain going up the ridge, but as you saw, today was not a very favorable day for climbing it. If you don't feel like climbing Ngozumpa, there is good news. You can just climb the glacial moraine at the end of the 5th lake, and from here as well you have a mind-blowing view. You can of course see Everest, you can see the whole western Khumbu, the Valley of Silence, you can see the backside of Phortse compared to what you usually see, and you stand on the brim of giant Ngozumpa Glacier. It is a bit of a slog down to Lungden, but first things first. It is supposed to be the day where we cross Renjo. Renjo is the pass connecting Gokyo Valley with Thame Valley, and because we heard it's quite snowy and icy, we started early today at 6:30 towards Renjo. The first part of the climb is quite easy. It gradually ascends along the lakeshore in Gokyo. It's quite nice, and it's a good warm-up for what comes next, because what follows is a really long, really steep climb up to a small basin, maybe former glacier basin.
Almost there to Renjo.
There, thankfully, path levels out a little bit, but the last like 200 vertical meters up to the pass are very steep again. And also in this area we started to have snow and ice. So we broke out our mini spikes, and after about 4 hours we reached the pass. We didn't stay very long because we saw what awaited us on the other side. The whole northwest face of Renjo was covered in snow and ice, and that made the beginning of the descent extremely difficult despite our microspikes. Probably without those microspikes we couldn't have done it at all. The first like 400 vertical meters of descent are very, very, very steep, and in our case we're completely covered in snow and ice, so we needed quite some time to get down from there. And now We are walking down to the village of Lungden, where we probably have lunch. It's not very steep anymore. We arrived in Lungden at almost exactly 2 p.m. So for climbing up to the pass we needed a little bit more than 4 hours, and for going down we needed 4 hours. So without the snow and ice I think you can estimate 3.5 each. And then we decided to stick to our plan and press on, and now we are on the way to Thame. We expect it to take something around 3 hours maybe. Yesterday was tough. We arrived in Thame exactly 11 hours after we left Gokyo, and unfortunately towards the evening big clouds, heavy fog rolled in and we couldn't see anything of the village. That is why we decided that this morning we would climb up to Thame Gompa and show you a little bit of the monastery and the view down to the village. And then afterwards we will continue to make our way down to Namche Bazaar. It takes about 3 hours to go from Thame to Namche Bazaar. We're almost there. I can already see the helipad in front of me, and it's It's a gorgeous walk. It's a really beautiful trail, great forests, gorgeous villages. It's a really beautiful trail, and Thame Valley is very, very pretty. The walk is altogether downhill, about 300 vertical meters, but don't let that fool you. There are several very short but very mean uphill parts in between. But apart from that, really beautiful, perfect day. Today is the last day of trekking, and we're leaving Namche Bazaar early this morning because we want to get all the way back to Lukla. The first half of today's trek is mostly down, but then the last couple of kilometers to Lukla are back upwards towards the airstrip. And for some reason the airlines have a weird policy that says if you want to fly out the next morning, you should arrive at Lukla at latest at 4:30 to confirm your seat. So this is the reason why we're setting off already at 7:30 this morning. While we're flying back to Kathmandu, let me quickly summarize our trek for you and also tell you how much we like the different aspects of it. This will also help you to compare it to the other trek reports on our channel. The trek took us 12 days. We had one acclimatization day in Namche and another one at the Dablam base camp, and then spent 2 full days at Gokyo. As you really shouldn't skip the acclimatization, 11 days is probably the minimum if you only spend 1 day in Gokyo. If you don't want to go to Pangboche for Dablam base camp, you can save another day. If you don't want to fly into Lukla, you can also use the road to Phortse, but you will need 1 more day of hiking each way. Using the road will also take you 2 days instead of the $175 40 minutes flight. Buses and even jeeps are a lot cheaper, but then again, you'll need food and accommodation for the 3 days extra, so in the end it doesn't actually make too much of a difference. You don't need a TIMS permit to do any trek within the Khumbu. However, you will need to pay the Pasang Lamu tourist fee, which is $20, as well as the Sagar Mata National Park entry fee, which is about $34. You don't need a licensed guide in the Khumbu either. Hiring one is optional. If you decide you want one, expect about $30 daily salary plus transport. By the way, the flight tickets are half price for Nepalis, but you can also hire a guide who is already in the Khumbu to save on that end. Unlike the Manaslu or the Annapurna circuit, crossing a high pass is not an integral part of the trek. If you decide to trek back down the way you came, you won't lose any time doing so. In that case, your highest point is Gokyo village at 4,750 meters. Crossing Renjo or climbing Gokyo Ri viewpoint is both optional and takes you to about 5,400 meters. If you decide to climb Ngozumpa Tse, your highest elevation will be 5,500 meters. But again, all that is optional and can be decided spontaneously. That, paired with the well-maintained trails, make trekking to Gokyo also a little easier than, for example, the Annapurna circuit. If you got enough time, you can be totally flexible with the length of your daily hikes. Pretty much anyone can walk to Gokyo given enough time. If you want to cross Renjo though, be aware that this pass is no easier than Lukla on the Manaslu or Torungla on the Annapurna circuit. If you follow our itinerary, you'll spend at least 1 week at close to or well above an altitude of 4,000 meters. This means altitude sickness is a real threat here. Make sure not to skip any acclimatization days and don't raise your sleeping altitude by more than 500 meters daily. When you're in Gokyo, you're 3 to 4 days of walking away from Lukla and 4 to 5 days of walking away from the road in Bupsa. In an emergency, rescue would only be possible by helicopter, making this trek a little more dangerous than the Annapurna circuit, but a lot safer than the Manaslu circuit. The remoteness of this trek depends a lot on how you define remote. You're in the middle of the world's highest mountain range, far away from the next large city and several days of walking away from the next road. On the other hand, Namche is a tourist hotspot with clothes and gear shops, ATMs, and even an Irish pub featuring Guinness beer on tap. Wi-Fi is everywhere and you'll meet hundreds of fellow tourists today. So, is it remote? I guess that's up to you to decide. The upside of the Khumbu and Gokyo being touristy, however, is that the lodges here are the best you can find in Nepal. Extensive menus, soft beds, hot showers and Wi-Fi are the standard in the Khumbu. Calculate with $30 per person per day and maybe up to $40 if you want a really nice lodge in Gokyo. Despite their valleys are constantly flooded with tourists from all over the world, the Sherpas manage to preserve their culture and their way of life. The Khumbu has lots of Gompas to visit, art to admire and village life to experience. 2 things to keep in mind though. Once you get to an elevation of more than 4,000 meters, the villages there are mostly lodges. And second, despite or because Sherpa culture is truly fascinating, you are in a very special part of Nepal. The country and its people have many more interesting aspects than you will find if you only visit the Khumbu. Circuit treks like the Manaslu circuit offer a better overview regarding how diverse Nepal is. And the same goes for the landscape. You will find less variety here than on other treks, simply because you never walk below 2,500 meters. If you want to see banana trees or rice paddies, there are way better choices than the Gokyo Trek. But if you want to see high mountains, there aren't. The Gokyo Trek is simply one of the very best treks in the world for admiring high mountains. 4 8,000ers, several 7,000ers, and many beautiful and iconic 6,000ers are just some of the highlights. Giant glaciers, Gokyo's wonderful lakes, narrow gorges, huge waterfalls and dense forests climbing up to more than 4,000 meters are others. And with that, you should now have all the info you need to decide whether the Gokyo Trek is the right trail for you to hike. Would you like to come to the Khumbu and walk this beautiful trek? Please use the comment section to let us know what you think about the Gokyo Trek. And in case you already did it, is this the best trek in Nepal? Or do you like others more? Do you have more useful information for the other viewers? Then please don't forget to post it below. Now, before we touch down in Kathmandu, I'd like to ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you liked this video. We will release more trek reports like this one, as well as other interesting videos about Nepal and its beautiful mountains very soon. So make sure you don't miss them and please subscribe. Thank you very much for watching and I hope to see you soon in the next video.